And welcome back. We're now in Photoshop. So I'm going to go to my folder and open this up for everybody. Take a look at all this. So we're going to go over to Dropbox, which is where my output files from Lightroom go. We're going to do the test photo shoot. Now here's a critical part. If you're going to use my action items and do this the way that I do, these have to open in a particular order. So what we really want to make sure of is that the details are selected and that they're sorted by name with the lowest number first. If we don't put them in the correct order, the manual merge action will not work properly. So we're going to select all of the images. And I will say this, if you're doing this on a laptop or on a slower machine that doesn't have the amount of RAM that I do and you can't really support opening your entire photo shoot at once, you can open them in groups, 10, 12 images at a time, just so you can get the manual merge action to work. I'm going to open them all so I can show you how I do this. So Photoshop will open all the files. It'll stay on the last file. I'm going to advance it to the first file right here. We can look over here at the little double arrow. You'll see the whole list. So we're going to start with this one. And then we are going to go over to our manual merge action item. Now, I have custom key bindings with everything in Photoshop, so my action play button, which is this guy down here, is set to F1 because I hate the help command opening the browser window, so I've eliminated that from doing that. And it also speeds the action items along, so you'll see them stack the image, and we'll just go through the entire photo shoot this way. All of the images are done. We're going to switch to our eraser tool, this guy right here. I'm going to show you the specific settings that I use. I use 100% opacity, 8% flow. My brush is right around 1800 to 2500 pixels, depending on the size of the image that I'm using. Hardness is always set to 0. Even the smallest minute amount of hardness is going to make this visible during the layering process. So we may make sure that we're using a very soft eraser to do this. So now that the eraser is selected, everything else is selected, we're just going to erase through the image, clearing off parts of the ambient to some level. We're now going to switch our action over to what I have named Op Flat Indoor. Now there's two main methods of doing this. The main one is by using this action item. After I've erased it out, click on the action. It will set the top opacity for the ambient shot at 75%, then flatten the image and apply another action item, which is this guy right here. So all we're going to do is hit play. We're going to erase out the yellowy tungsten part so that it's blended and we don't have any carry shadow. Hit the action item. We're going to get rid of the pink, make the window look good in here, erase that out, and then hit the button. Okay. See, sometimes you can erase a little too much. We're just going to take the eraser over. I try to avoid hitting the pendant lamps because a pendant lamp that's that long is almost impossible to not get a cast shadow from. So just avoid erasing those out as much as other things. Those are really the only true issue. So once that's done, hit the flatten key again. We're just going to roll through the images, erasing out the sections that we don't really need. I don't like that shadow. So back that out. Do that. Now, if you don't want the top layer to go down to 75%, because some of these images, it doesn't necessarily work, the final image will end up being too dark. I have a fix for that, and I'll show you that in a couple of minutes. But if you don't want to do the 75%, there's a way to avoid it entirely. Flatten the image at this point, which is Control-E. The image will flatten, as you can see over here. Turns the background. We'll go over here to the indoor action item. Now I'm going to make all of my action items available in the Dropbox folder for anyone to download and install. And if you have any issues installing them, I will also make a short tutorial to show you how to do that. So, this image is flattened. We're going to apply the indoor. And that one's done. You can take a look here. It left the exposure where we wanted it. Didn't increase that shadow over here anymore. Left a little bit of shadow over there in the corner, so I'll probably take my dodge tool to that area. Now, dodge is set the same way as the eraser. About 1500 pixels, 0% hardness, 10% exposure, protect tones. Always set on shadows. It's the only thing we're really doing with the dodge tool. Doesn't need to be over anything past 10% because the dodge and burn tools in this software are evil. So that's done. Moving on to the next image. A quick way to move through images, as you see me doing here, it's a key command of Control plus the, I'm going to call it the squiggle key. It's the key that's to the left of number 1 on most conventional keyboards. If you have a Mac, I'm not sure it's that way because I don't do Mac. But the key is the 1 to the left of the numeral 1. Control numeral 1 advances your image to the next image. So, we're going to erase out these sections here. We're going to make sure we're using the erase tool to do it. I'm just going to leave it like that. I'm going to use the Op-Flat indoor action for this one. Now you can see here we're just getting rid of the tungsten, making a nice even image. Now I know you can notice, if you're looking closely, you can see the reflections of the flash here. I'll show you a couple of quick ways of eliminating that. Probably already know them, but I'm going to go over them anyway for any case anyone doesn't. That one's done. Erase that out a little bit more, flatten that one out. Basically we're just taking out the yellow and making a nice combination of both the strobe exposure and the ambient exposure. Not too much to be done about those shadows. Sometimes I do make the eraser smaller if I'm trying to avoid things. As you can see here, we're just taking out the exposure from the window. Now, this image, not sure if you can notice it, but if you look over here to the corner of the image, you can see there's a bit of softness to this one, which probably means there's a slight amount of movement in between the two images. So all we're going to do is look for the point where things line up. Leave it there. Easiest way to do that, hit V. V will move you over to this key right here, the first one. And what that'll allow you to do is move any unlocked layer with just like the nudge, your arrow tools. It'll allow you to just quickly, easily, very small movements. So once we've got that one aligned, we'll go back through, do the flat indoor, and then move on to the next one. I'm just going to erase out the windows, as you can see there. Now, I want to go over how I have Photoshop set up here. I have Photoshop set up specifically to do real estate photography. The left panel over here is our action items. The right panels over here are layers, history, and properties. Properties are usable when you put masks on things. History just allows us to quickly roll back if we screw something up like I just did on this one. If you've got something like the indoor action selected, it will not flatten images. It will only apply the indoor corrections to the top image. So if you miss a step and don't flatten, you'll notice it because it won't let you save it. The action for saving, which we'll go over here in a little bit, will prevent you from saving anything other than a flattened JPEG. But just be aware, the indoor, outdoor, those sorts of things, the desatch, all the other options that we have over here, only work on the top layer that is selected. So flatten that out and hit indoor, and then that one's done. You can go back and see the difference here. Just a few things that we're applying. So we're just going to go over here and take care of the yellow. I don't really like that. I'll leave that alone. And then so you can see basically all we're doing is painting the exposure in and taking the yellow out and then flattening, moving on to the next. Yeah, I didn't really notice it until I was already done with the shot. But yeah, I do end up taking this out in Photoshop. I'll show you how to do that. So that's the beginning of the tour. Now, we're going to go over the saving, and then I'm going to show you some retouching tricks and that sort of stuff. So, for saving, go to the Save As action. Click on the Save command that is saved within this action. Double-click on it. That'll open up the Save dialog. Control-Shift-N. Control-Alt-N. So once we have our new folder, we're going to go ahead and open it up. Make sure we haven't selected anything, any of the other images in this folder, otherwise start the Save dialog over again. Make sure, the most critical thing, make sure that the As a Copy box is not checked. If it is checked, the action item will simply save the image and overwrite every single time you use the action. Make sure that box is checked. Since it isn't, we're going to hit Save, hit OK. That will start the action over again. If you hit whatever key you have bound to your action item, it'll save it, close it, move on to the next folder. So then we just roll through. Now I'm going to show you some retouching because that portion is done. So this one here, I'm probably going to use the patch tool on this just because the patch tool works pretty well for things of this nature, especially ones on the edge of the canvas. Slide it over, align it, deselect, and it's gone. So then we'll hit our save function and keep going. So to make sure this is working, since I have all mine set to Dropbox, just double click on your Dropbox folder. Go over to whatever folder you have set up for your output images. Mine is Jordan Processing at Home. You'll see the test photo shoot that we've been working on. Double click on that, you look in the new folder, And you'll see that it is writing all of the finalized images into that folder as we click through them. Just, you know, peace of mind to make sure it's working properly. So on this one, I'm going to retouch things a little bit. Chances are on this one, it's probably going to be a little bit more tedious than I normally would do. So I can eliminate most of this way. I'm just using the clone tool for this. I'm going to do this in a couple of steps. As you can see, I've got those lines wrong, so I'm going to go back over and get them right. Just like that. And we'll have to eliminate myself. Still using just the clone tool. Since this is so small, we're talking about maybe, what, a couple hundred pixels out of 3,000. As long as it matches the surrounding area, it usually is so small that it's not really visible to the naked eye. So as you can see, that's eliminated. Save that one. Nothing to correct in this. We'll just save that one. Now, on ones like this that are just a little darker than I would like, I'm either going to use the dodge tool to open the shadows up just a bit more, or I'm going to go over and use another action that I've got built, which is called Gamma Bump. So what this is going to do is it's going to automate a process of putting an exposure mask on top, adjusting the gamma, flattening the exposure mask into the image, and allowing you to just continue and save. So we're going to hit Gamma Bump, hit play. That'll brighten the image up, and then I'm going to go back over to my Save As action and save that one. Now you see that one actually really matches the density of the next image, so clearly it needs to be done in some of them. We'll go back over here. Now, some things work pretty well with the healing brush. I've found that bathroom walls are #1 for healing brush. Just seems to work out pretty well. It does not like contrast differences, so be aware if there's a contrast difference. And what I mean by that is like the dark line with the lighter colors on either side. If you run the healing brush with the dark edge next to the light edge, it will get confused. So just make sure that you're grabbing exactly the same thing you're going to try to replace. And you'll see it do that little flare move. That's what we're trying to avoid it doing. So that minimizes that. Hit save, and save. I'm switching over to the clone stamp. Take that out with clone stamp. Now I'm going to grab this section right here, walk up, just apply it just like that, and it's gone. And then we're going to save that one. So that pretty much takes care of that. And here is the folder with all the finished images, and then just drop and drag this into Torbuzz and rename, and you're good to go. So that concludes the Photoshop portion of this. If you have any further questions, please feel free to call or email me, and we can go over this in a more detailed fashion. But this should give you a good overview of how this process works. Thanks, and thanks for sticking around to the end.